A little while back, Na'eem Jeenah, speaking on The Talking Point on SAfm, offered his analysis of the Israeli-Iran war. In it, he made comments which were not accurate, including that Israel's attack on Iran was illegal and that Iran has made it clear that it does not want a nuclear weapon. I'm Charisse, Zeifert, the Deputy Director at the Jewish Board of Deputies, and in this series, we look at our right of reply. I'm delighted to have as my expert today Dr. Efrat Sopher, Chair of the Board of Advisors at the Israeli Center for Iran and Gulf States Research. She's also an advisor on foreign policy in the Middle East to governments and organizations. Let's get into it. Efrat, thanks so much for joining me. Let's start with the first point that I think we would like to discuss. Was Israel's attack on Iran legal?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor and pleasure to be in South Africa, albeit virtually, hopefully one day in person. But thank you so much for including me, and thank you to the amazing work of the South African Board of Jewish Deputies.
It really is lovely to have you. And I also hope it'll be one of many times, Dr. Sopher.
Well, Iran is one of the subjects I follow most. It's and seeing the Israel-Iran 12-day war was something that brought up both strategic and legal questions, issues. And the article that you mention is one that I feel is one of many that smacks of politics trumping law. If you look, and law involves looking at the facts. Now, if we look at international law, first of all, the Article 51 of the UN Charter gives sovereign states the right to self-defense. When we look at the laws of war, as you know, and as our listeners probably know, we have the laws governing the resort to force, jus ad bellum, and we have the laws governing the conduct of warfare, jus in bello. Now, if we look at the context of what has happened throughout history, Iran and Israel before the Islamic Revolution had excellent ties. I wrote my PhD on it. They had flourishing ties both in military, civilian, education, agriculture, you name it. And when the Islamic Revolution happened, Iranian policy literally turned overnight. Iranian revolutionary forces forced their way into the Israeli embassy, ransacked it, and handed over the embassy to the PLO. And this was an act of war in a way. After that, Iranian foreign policy became diametrically opposed to the way it was before, which meant that the US became the big Satan and Israel became the little Satan. And almost every speech that Ayatollah Khomeini and his successors spoke about was destroying Israel. And we saw that come into action with Iran financing, supporting, training its proxies, Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, of course, the IRGC, its wing, which was the father organization to Hamas and Hezbollah, and they're internationally recognized illegal terrorist organizations. And so when we saw, and then we also saw the April and October attacks against Israel, completely unprovoked, which also continued that ongoing state of war between Israel and Iran. Now, I have to say here that this is not a war against the Iranian people. This is a war against the regime. The Iranian people are peace-loving, educated, amazing, outward-looking people. But this is something that the Islamic Republic it's a war that the Islamic Republic has waged against the Jewish state. This, we believe, is also, interestingly, has had the Islamic Republic using its diplomatic relations against Israel too, forming various alliances, which I'm sure you'd be more than familiar with, of cozying up to governments around the world, forging warfare against Israel by legal means, using every other tool in its kit. And so we saw, for example, the attack on April 13th against Israel, which saw the most significant attempted drone attack against any given country in history. This is part of Iranian military strategy. Sorry, and I'm going on a little bit, but just so
Not
that
at
our
all.
listeners
No, it's important.
have
It's important that we understand this.
a complete picture. And so legally, because this war has been ongoing since 1979, the rules of law that apply here are the jus in bello laws, which call for proportionality assessments accompanied by precautions being taken to strive to reduce civilian casualties and collateral damage. And as we saw in the pictures in the 12-day war, we saw that the targeted precision strikes against Iranian military leaders, against military installations, against factories that produced ballistic missiles that could be used against any other state, not just Israel, that could be used by its proxies. And also, might I add, legally, since we're talking legals, the Rafael Grossi, the director of the International Atomic Agency, the IAEA, came out on June 12th with an unprecedented vote by the members of the IAEA, stating that Iran was breaking its obligations on the nuclear side. So all in all, Israel was well within its legal rights to defend itself and strike Iranian military targets.
Dr. Sopher, thanks actually for going into detail because I think these things need to be said. There's so much emotion, especially, when Israel is involved, it's holy to so many different people and the emotions run extremely high. So it is important that the facts don't cloud our interpretation. The other thing that Na'eem said in that interview, and it kind of begs the question, if Israel had the legal right to attack, he's claimed that then, well, Iran didn't say it was seeking nuclear um, ambitions. What would you respond to that?
The facts speak for themselves. Iran has Iran has held up until before the 12-day war. Iran held 16 times the amount of enriched uranium it was legally allowed to have. That is a fact. Iran was constantly building, enriching uranium, building centrifuges. We saw it in Esfahan, in Natanz, in Fordo. It was persistently doing that, persistently threatening Israel. And only yesterday, Abbas Araghchi, their foreign minister, said that Iran will never stop striving towards a nuclear weapon. And so to have a regime like that holding a nuclear weapon is something that cannot happen because Iran is one. And as we've seen in her attacks against Israel, against US bases, it is much more likely to use a weapon like that.
You've clarified those two aspects extremely well. The last one that I'd like to look at, Dr. Sopher, is that Israel acts with impunity because America is behind it. How would you counter that?
I think that that statement, first of all, strikes of, has resonance of anti-Semitism there, of Israel having undue influence over a superpower who does whatever it thinks is best for its own national security. I think that is deeply wrong and deeply misguided. Israel is the United States' biggest ally in the Middle East. They are both democracies. They both seek stability. They both have a long-standing alliance. And I think the United States has not been shy to not do what Israel would have wished the United States to do. And I think that the United States, in its attack on Fordo in particular, demonstrated that the United States will not condone a nuclear Iran. The United States will not stand for the Islamic Republic spreading instability throughout the region. And so I think that especially that attack demonstrated the United States' involvement, interest within not just the Middle East, but the international system. And to think that Israel would be controlling that is preposterous.
Yeah. Dr. Sopher, thank you so much for providing your expertise. It is really important to speak to specialists and not those who just claim to be specialists and then spew absolute rubbish or anti-Israel rhetoric that just serves their purposes. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you.
And that was just Dr. Efrat Sopher, Chair of the Board of Advisors at the Esri Center for Iran and Gulf States Research, and an expert on foreign policy in the Middle East. And the episode is Debunking the Myths.